As a leading customer experience and employee engagement practitioner in Australia, I have to say some of the stories I've read have been heart-wrenchingly sad and absolutely terrible, coming in a first world country. Throwing money at a problem that is obviously systemic may be a small step in the right direction, but it's definitely not the solution. If you think about it, there are some fundamental issues at play here. A society is fundamentally judged by how well it looks after its most vulnerable people, and in this case, we have absolutely failed miserably. We are what we are because of the previous generation. They have educated us, they have provided us with resources, and in their time of retirement is when we should now pay back. This is a time when we should look after them. The fact of the matter is that it's just a matter of time before we end up in an aged care situation as well. And therefore, we should be very, very interested in this situation because if we don't fix it, this is going to be hell for us when we retire. When you look at the interim findings of the Royal Commission report into the aged care industry, the 4 points that they raise are the following. The first point is that the entire industry is based on transactions and not care. And that is incredibly sad when you think about it because at this stage of people's lives, more than anything else, they actually need connection and care. The second point the Royal Commission made was that the entire industry minimizes the voice of carers and the actual aged care clients themselves. In other words, the voice of the customer is not at the table. The third point is that the regulatory body is completely lacks transparency and offers no incentive in terms of making sure standards are met or exceeded. And finally, if you look at the next stakeholder after customers, you've got staff who are under immense pressure and largely feel unappreciated. So in that situation, you've got to say the foundational elements of the industry are problematic. And unless you fix these, nothing else is going to work. Let's face it, all businesses look at cost cutting as a business initiative. So there's absolutely no doubt that this industry is suffering from lack of funding. But the fact of the matter is, cost cutting is par for the course in all businesses. The real issue at play is you need to understand, what drives someone to work in the aged care center. And fundamentally, it comes from a core human need of love and connection. The fact that these people want to care for older people, look after them, connect with them at a time when they are most vulnerable. This is a profession that is not just a job, it's an actual vocation. Now, I want you to imagine if you take up a job in this industry where you really want to help someone, you really want to connect with someone, and then imagine the frustration of not being able to do exactly that. Imagine the frustration of being caught in a position where rather than being good to patients because of lack of resources, you have to be nasty to patients. So the huge opportunity aged care centers have is to truly engage staff. Because guess what? They are in the best position to find opportunities to increase effectiveness of aged care, but also find efficiencies in terms of reducing costs. So rather than treating them like a resource, it's much better to actually bring them into the tent and truly engage them to drive improvements. What we have found in our studies nationwide is that an engaged staff member is way more productive than a normal staff member. In fact, we found that the discretionary effort that an engaged staff member gives you is 75% more. two of the most important stakeholders have been burnt in this process, namely the staff and your customers. Therefore, in any process to recover, you have to strongly engage both these stakeholders. So, the first point I would make is truly understand staff grievances. They are completely on the front line at the coal face and they intuitively know exactly what is going wrong. So the way you would do that is quantitatively via anonymous surveys, and qualitatively you could also do it via staff discussions. The next step is very critical. You've got to acknowledge the actual issues raised, that you understand what was raised and you acknowledge that these are serious issues. The next stage is facilitate a customer strategy workshop and involve staff. Ideally, involve all staff, but if not, at least a good size sample of staff. And in this workshop, develop a truly inspirational vision and strategic direction based on customer focus and care. The key outputs from this session would be a planned customer experience statement that includes functional and emotional elements. Let me explain this. Functional is things like being timely, being reliable, being safe as an example. But the emotional aspects are really more important. It's really a case of how you want your customers to feel after an interaction with you. And from this, establish some service standards, some hardcore service standards that you can use as a yardstick to determine whether you're performing well or not. Once you develop your strategy, the next step is to engage your staff to creatively come up with initiatives to actually deliver this customer strategy. We call this bottom up ideation. You can either tell staff to do something, but if you truly want to drive commitment, you've got to get involvement. And getting them involved in actually coming up with improvement initiatives is a great way to engage employees. Then the next step is to obviously implement these improvement initiatives. And once you implement these improvement initiatives, you'll start noticing a change. After a while, and when your customer strategy has settled down, point number 6 comes into play. It's really a case of introducing a voice of the employee and a voice of the customer survey process to really track progress against the strategy you've actually developed. And this is a great way to actually make sure that it's not just a strategy that hangs on a wall somewhere, that it's alive and it's measured and managed. You can develop all the strategies in the world, but if you don't measure them, you can't truly manage them. So once things have settled a bit, it's a great idea to establish a customer advisory panel that consists of actual clients and carers at each aged care home. And in this way, you can actually get a qualitative discussion going in terms of what initiatives you're planning to do, how well they are being implemented, and you can then get direct qualitative feedback in terms of whether your improvements are working or not working. But the most important thing is this key stakeholder now has a truly strong voice in the program. Based on your voice of the customer and voice of the employer surveys, consistently track key drivers of engagement and disengagement and continuously take, I would say, corrective action. So this is not something where you hit a destination. It's a consistent journey of listening to feedback and taking action, listening to feedback and taking action. And if you follow these 8 points, you will gradually but surely recover your aged care center to a center of true care and connection for your clients and an empowering and engaging workplace for your staff.
Engaged strategy, unleashing the potential in organizations and individuals for over 10 years.